Donald Trump's press secretary, Karoline Leavitt, tells a lot of lies, but one of the worst lies to me is this false narrative she pushes that Donald Trump's administration is the most transparent in history. It's just not true. She says it, though, because they respond to a lot of questions. They don't answer the questions. An answer would require some semblance of truth, and they avoid truth like the plague. But they also avoid scandals, which is why it is so ridiculous that Karoline Leavitt is pushing this narrative, because in the wake of one of the worst scandals this administration has seen, with the reports of Elon Musk's drug use, Karoline Leavitt is running and hiding from reporters, and we are going to get into it all. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. Now, before we can get into how terrified Karoline Leavitt is to be asked any questions about Elon Musk's use of, certain substances, we need a little context, and we're going to get that from Ari Melber right here.
Let's be clear that on the evidence, which is how we all try to keep track of things, if we're being serious in journalism or policy, you have to count it up. A lot of these things did not work as they were claimed to work. A lot of these so-called savings did not materialize. And that's before you even get to counting up the cost of some of these cuts. Now, Musk set out to save $150 billion. That's what he says he might have gotten. Of course, that's far less than the trillions he promised, and he is leaving. He could have taken a permanent position where he'd have to do more transparency or divest, but instead, he's getting out of Dodge. There are independent reports which suggest if you look at actual verified savings and not the sort of rosy estimates, you get down to $16 billion. In federal dollars, when you talk about multi-year programs, that's actually a tiny slice. The New York Times reports that the approach, what I just mentioned, how the things work, the firings, and then sometimes rehirings, the productivity loss, paid leave for the people that they fired when they didn't really have a plan worked out, also adds upwards of $135 billion in the fiscal year. Now, because this was so chaotic and fast, they, the government, and they, the New York Times and reports, and we here at MSNBC cannot give you a full and exact accounting. I can just show you that when it's all said and done, he may have cost more than he saved, and he was supposed to be Mr. Savings. Now, we don't know why different information leaks out when it does, but on this tough news day for Mr. Musk and a tough day for him in politics as he kind of steps back, there are quite serious reports about his use of drugs while cozying up to Trump on the campaign trail as recently as last year. Now, Times puts it that he was using drugs more intensely than previously known. The article lists, quote, ketamine, ecstasy, psychedelic mushrooms, Adderall. Now, that is a serious set of claims. And while people can debate what private individuals do, whether it breaks the law or not, and how newsworthy that is, this matters for someone who is wielding government power, who was overseeing programs where they fire people. Some people in the federal government can be removed for drug use. He was working as a special employee in the federal government, and the Times is reporting about that. I also want to tell you that while that's in the Times, NBC News has not confirmed it. Now, Musk has discussed some of these issues. Take a listen.
But you've admitted that you have a ketamine subscription, prescription.
Yeah.
Do you think you're inebriated when you do ketamine?
No, if you do a lot of ketamine, then you're inebriated. If you do a small amount, you're not.
That's my question about, do you ever abuse it? That's why
I don't think so.
That was an exchange there with journalist Don Lemon, who was then ousted from X, which Musk had bought, after that interview. I do want to note in the timeline, because some of this has to do with his political and government activities, the interview itself there was before the campaign time that he was spending with Trump. And the Times reports that it did go, they say, and they're reporting, his usage was beyond what you might call, quote, occasional use. Now,
Ari Melber said something very important in that clip that I don't want us to overlook. He said that MSNBC could not yet confirm the reporting from the New York Times of Elon Musk's drug use during the campaign and during his time as a special government employee. Now, there's a reason that they can't confirm that. Of course, this is an ongoing story, but it's also because the White House won't respond. And neither will Tesla, neither will SpaceX, neither will the Boring Company. No one that Elon associates with is willing to speak out on this because, as you can expect, it's probably pretty true. But that's why the White House is running so scared, and we can see this with a journalist who reported on just how terrified the White House is to answer their questions, so much so that they're hiding. And we're going to check that out right here. White House refuses to come clean on Musk drug testing. The Trump White House is typically game to spin any narrative lobbed its way, but reports about Elon Musk's rampant drug use appear to be another story. Following the New York Times' shocking report that Musk, while acting as a senior advisor to Donald Trump, was regularly consuming large amounts of drugs, reporter Megan Tuhey appeared on MSNBC to discuss the story. In the process, she revealed that the White House had refused to answer questions put to them about whether or not they had administered drug tests to Musk during his tenure. Musk's SpaceX similarly did not respond to questions from the Times, specifically about whether the company gave Musk advance notice of the random drug test it administers to its employees, something it reportedly began doing after he infamously smoked weed during his appearance on Joe Rogan's podcast. SpaceX, as a large government contractor, is required to maintain a drug-free workforce. As Tuhey explains, what both of these things, the White House's refusal to answer questions and reports that SpaceX was giving Musk a heads-up on drug tests, allowing him to mediate his drug use accordingly, highlight is that there hasn't been any sort of scrutiny or true monitoring or testing of Musk, even as his drug use reportedly became harder to ignore. No accountability. That is always what it is for these people. And the people around Donald Trump in the highest positions of power seem to face the least scrutiny in the most important jobs. Elon Musk is a great example of this, and he is running a company, as the article said, that receives billions of dollars from the government. We're going to be handing out these checks to Elon Musk, and he's just going to be, what, snorting them? Like, this is absurd. If this was anyone else, this is the Republican narrative, by the way. People are collecting checks, or collecting their welfare from the government, and they're doing drugs, and they're lazy. But that's actually the story of Elon Musk, someone who doesn't want to take any accountability from it, and the White House is clearly running from it. Karoline Leavitt refusing to answer questions. I was shocked that she wasn't at this press conference today, but it's clear the reason: she's running from the press. Not a shock. And it's also not a shock that Donald Trump is doing everything in the wake of this story to spin up some distraction. And he sounded like he was on drugs when he was talking about the investments he got in his overseas trip right here.
Jobs, and those numbers are going through the roof. We're going to have close to $11 trillion invested in new investments in the United States, and you can look at other years. There's never been anything like that. And by the way, that's essentially in 2 months, not 4 months, because it took me a little time to get acclimated. But over the last 2.5 months, we're over $11 trillion is going to be coming. Apple.
Is it just me, or does every time Donald Trump talks about this investment, the number just goes up? It's like 2 trillion, then it's 5, it's 11, now next week it'll be 19. But it's just a big distraction. He knows his economic policies are a failure. He knows his trade war is collapsing, and he's trying to distract. And we heard from Ari Melber with some context on the Elon story, but he also did a great job covering the failure of Donald Trump's trade war, and I want to hear more about that right here.
Musk is again trying to have it both ways, and he has clearly basked in some of the power and attention of being tied to the president and donating a lot of money to the president when they were running last year, while also wanting to make the break in ways that benefit or matter to him. He did express disapproval, disagreement with aspects of that budget, and he noted that it is in conflict with his supposed goal of saving money, which he's leaving having not achieved. Meanwhile, we have the tariffs, which many business leaders continue to oppose. The way Trump launched them, how they've affected chaotic markets, this week getting a court setback. The Treasury Secretary is still going back and forth about how Trump's inconsistent messaging towards China on whether there'll be high, medium, or low tariffs, how that's affecting negotiations there.
I would say that they are a bit stalled.
So stalled, there was a time when the president thought that it was moving forward pretty significantly.
Again, I think that given the magnitude of the talks, given the complexity, that this is going to require both leaders to weigh in with each other.
That's the Trump perspective. Those are the people defending how this is going. And I guess because they've dealt with so much reality, setbacks, market feedback, they're finding that just lying or claiming that things are perfect doesn't work. So we're hearing a still best case scenario of failed trade war policies. We've gone from 90 deals in 90 days to maybe we're going to get a deal to the deals are stalled. Now, there's a report that says this trade war thus far has already cost over $30 billion. Not all of that will be felt by people overnight. Reuters making the point that the lost sales, the higher costs, will kind of spread out as costs across the economy, and they'll be paid by a lot of regular people. Here's a toy company CEO speaking out today.
Because the rules change every 2 days, like we're stuck in some sort of telenovela, you don't really know what to do. We are constantly making decisions with guesses because we don't know what the rules are. This is our own government doing this to us, which is shocking. It's absolutely shocking.
That continues to happen. And while on some days the trade war might not feel like big news, it might not have another inflection point, it is the daily life and setback of so many of these companies and businesses. This is not necessarily at this point a big story about ideology. It's become a story about competence and incompetence. A U.S. government led by Donald Trump claiming we're going to do this thing and then failing to do that thing, and then the thing they're doing costing Americans a lot of money. And the whole point in the beginning was it was going to save us money or make us stronger against other countries. Over at the ports, the reporting shows the inconsistency is taking its toll. One official saying one day it makes sense to ship, the next day it doesn't. Over in Europe, a trade negotiator says it doesn't make any sense to negotiate about tariffs that might be proved illegal, citing the U.S. court ruling against Trump this week. The courts leave some latitude for Congress and the president to do normal tariffing and normal trade work. That's why, if you think back, even if you're not following it that closely, you might not remember huge court rulings against the trade policies of the last several presidents in both parties. But Trump on this issue, like on immigration, has pushed these laws past the breaking point. And that's why he's getting adverse rulings. Take the Fox News sister outlet, the Wall Street Journal. Their very pro-trade, pro-Wall Street editorial board says it's time that court ruling put Trump, he's the chief executive, put Trump in his proper constitutional place, noting he is no tariff king, and he's not supposed to be.
We should know this at this point, but with the Trump administration, it's usually all a distraction, and that is what this is. But it is incumbent upon us to point out what needs to be covered, the corruption and the incompetence, and hold them accountable. We're going to be doing so on this show every single day, and if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. Until next time, I'll see you soon.